When your sister did Showgirls, how did you feel as her brother?
She didn't write it. She didn't direct it. And you know, as for acting, if you're going to act a certain way, it's from the director telling you to do a scene a certain way. Two grown men acting like cowards.
Yep.
That
To this
is.
day would knock him out if I saw him.
So I'm going to tell you one other secret fact about Jason, okay? Jason, there was a show called Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Right?
Hi, welcome to 90who10. I'm your host, Jessica Entner. I'm sitting here with my co-host,
Dan Eisenstein.
and also a dear friend, Jason Berkley.
Dr. Jason Berkley.
Dr. Jason
Yeah,
Berkley.
That's
Do you want to give a little intro as to how you know Jason?
My very good friend, Dr. Jason Berkley.
Guys,
Also, just to give a little background, happens to be the brother of Saved by the Bell star Elizabeth Berkley.
And shocker, he is as tall, if not taller.
Oh,
than
he's
she
super
is.
tall. He's
She's quite tall.
6'7".
Yeah.
she's about 5'5". She's 5'11". I'm almost 6'7". Yeah.
By the way, when I met Jason, who's 6'7", he was driving a Honda Civic. Was it a Civic?
Honda CRX.
Which is probably like the smallest
I remember those.
car that it's like it was
They're
like
like a Prius.
yeah,
but
no,
smaller. Yeah.
It was like a tuna
like a
can.
mini Prius.
Yeah.
The best comparison I would make is if you remember from the Police Academy movie, when Hightower took the back seat out and drove that car.
Yeah.
It was like
the
that,
funniest thing you ever
I
saw.
kind of remember that.
The fight. So Jason, you may be able to tell from his background. Did you grow up in Detroit?
Well, no, my parents did. And then I grew up in the suburbs area called Farmington Hills, which is about 20 minutes kind of north of the city. But I remained faithful to my sports teams. And right now my Lions are on the verge of going to the Super Bowl. So this is the first time in my life. Football's fun.
Yeah.
And
it's okay. My husband's a Bears fan. I understand.
Yeah, no, we hate the Bears. But this is a very exciting time in Detroit sports, and it's something that we've never really seen. So we're due.
It's so funny. After my second note after you're growing up in Michigan is Jason is a hardcore Detroit sports fan.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a hockey fan. And you also have a podcast.
Fan. And I do have a podcast. It's called Dr. Hockey. I do one of my best friends. His name is Dr. Jay Calvert. He's a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills and is the former head of the Rhinoplasty Society. So if you want your nose perfect, go to Jay.
I feel like that's the most perfect thing for a hockey.
That's awesome.
Sponsored
really
by Dr.
Beverly.
We
talk about the injuries. We talk about other aspects of it, facial injuries, and other parts of the game that nobody can't find anywhere else. So,
yeah, that's fantastic.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Great. That's awesome. I'm gonna have to listen to that. So you grew up outside the Detroit area.
Yes.
Yeah. And then how old your family moved out here?
In fact, we went to school. She's a few years younger than me, but we went to school with Selma Blair.
Oh, okay.
Totally.
So she's how much younger than you is she?
She's 3 years younger than me, I think.
And how much younger is Elizabeth than you?
About 3 years younger.
Okay. So they were probably around the same age.
They were in the same grade. Yep. And actually, Selma became very good friends of mine after she came to see me. And this is not violating any type of HIPAA thing because it's been in all newspapers with all of her complaints. And I'm the one who helped her find her diagnosis of MS, even though I don't treat. Okay, so let me just back up a bit. I'm a neurologist, board certified neurologist. I don't focus on general neurology anymore. I focus on spine and back pain, neck pain, and I do all the injections for that. But she had called me and contacted me through my sister about some issues she was having and came in and whatever. And I got some scans on her, listened to her, which apparently no one else had. And we were able to figure out that she has MS. And that's how she came to the diagnosis. And, we were able to kind of give her a little bit of hope for treatment and so forth. So we become pretty good buddies now. And we text every so often. And she's a really, really, really good person.
I've heard that.
By the way, Jess, if you don't have a good friend who's a doctor on speed dial, you got to get one. I
was too busy hanging out with musicians, Dan.
Well, listen, I was hanging out with Jason.
All the right people.
He's going to tell you we were goofing around. I mean, we had one time at my house, this crazy egg war. Do you remember that?
Oh, my God.
If I don't know what's going on and I need advice, I give Jay a call. And
There's a few of those.
He takes care of me.
There are a few of those where I'm like, how did that person get into medical school?
Well, no, I always knew.
Awesome.
The fact that he went to medical school didn't surprise me one bit. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
But the fact that he's actually a successful doctor does. No,
No.
I mean, neurologist is no joke. So congrats on that.
Yeah. But also a sweetheart of a guy,
Thank you.
by the fact that he's doing
So
this
wait,
today.
what? So okay, so you were not born in Michigan, or you
I
were?
was.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was
so
born in
you're a
Michigan,
Michigander.
Yeah, I'm a native Michigander. And when I was at Michigan State, 1988, so it was my sophomore year starting, my parents moved to California. My sister's career was taking off. At that time, she got Saved by the Bell. And that wasn't why my parents moved. They wanted to get out of the cold weather.
Yeah.
So I would come back and forth for vacation, and they moved to Calabasas.
Yep.
So what happened was I worked at a camp there called Meadow Oaks, which is no longer there.
I know. I went to Meadow Oaks when I was a kid.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
And the first time I met any of you guys was Soleil Moon Frye's birthday party.
Okay.
That was my first,
That's amazing.
my first opening to this whole other lifestyle. And I remember there was this weird thing that happened where somehow some gang member showed up and held a gun.
Very 90s. Very 90s.
It was Rain or someone. And I said, oh my God, these guys are crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were crazy.
By no fault of their own. They did nothing wrong. I don't know who this person was, but I said, these guys are interesting. I got to see where this is going to go.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that was the first and only time that happened. That happened during my high school years as well.
My first interaction at your house, your pool with Robin.
Robin Thicke, yeah.
Robin Thicke. I pushed him in the pool, and he forced me to give him $20 for a new pair of shoes.
I love it. I love it.
Like, everyone says, his dad has so much money.
Yeah.
Don't give him the $20.
Yeah. But you're a nice guy. You probably gave him the $20.
I did. Yeah. I did. I felt bad. I mean, I haven't seen Robin in decades, but I don't know how some of the things happen. Thank God we didn't have cell phones back there.
Yeah.
No, we had the last of the good stuff for sure.
Yeah. There are two reasons why I'm glad there were no cell phones. Not just documenting certain things that probably a lot of us would be embarrassed. I think you lose part of yourself and be more focused on recording than actually being in the moment.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said. Yeah, there's something to be said for, we can talk about that giant food fight we had at your house and remember it, and it's just as real as it happened last week.
Sure.
But they don't need a picture of it or a video to laugh about it.
Right.
I actually think that's true. Like when you're looking at something through a lens, it totally kind of like almost dulls it.
As you know, Dan, I'm a huge Springsteen fan, and what it really hit me a few years ago. Bruce, I was very close to the stage, and Bruce was right in front of me performing, and I took out my camera, my phone, and took a picture of him. Someone behind the stage had taken a picture of Bruce at the time I was taking a picture of Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
In the picture, and I said to myself, wait a minute, I lost that moment of the guy performing 2 feet in front of me and focused on taking a picture of it. And I just said at that point, if you go to a concert nowadays, all you see are people doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Their phone doing this, whatever. Yep. And they're not in the moment. It's just something that I think they've lost that ability to be able to remember it and just absorb it. And so that's just something that my observation about it.
I definitely hate to break it to you. If you ever go to like any type of club or like area where there's like kids, like late night, they don't even talk to each other. They are all on their phones taking pictures of where they are. And it's like there's Instagrammable restaurants. Like for fuck's sake, just go out and eat.
That's what I was going to say about Coachella. I mean, I've been going to Coachella since the beginning, and it was all about the bands and the music. And now it's all about
like desert rats,
taking the picture and the outfit and the hashtag. It's all about that.
It's about being there.
It's changed what it's about.
So out of curiosity, because it sounds like you were having your own Hollywood experience while your sister was actually doing a lot of, work, and she started kind of getting buzz around her, and she was on Saved by the Bell. So you had already met all these people. So were you kind of falling into the same kind of groups of friends that she was, just kind of organically? Like when you moved here, how did that all?
My sister was never really into that Hollywood scene per se.
Yeah.
She was never, going to the Ivy with a group of people. That wasn't her thing. She had a boyfriend when she was younger. And so it was always her doing her own thing.
And she was a dancer, right?
Yeah, of course. And so for me, it was a completely separate thing, even though it was still within Hollywood, meeting Dave and Dan and Brian and all the guys. They were just my friends. It didn't really seem to me like it was a Hollywood thing until we went out somewhere.
Now, let me ask you this. So when we met you, you were still in school. You were still in Michigan State.
Yes.
I think you were home for the summer or something, right?
I would come home for spring break.
And then
I would
you'd go
come for the
back.
summer.
You'd go
Yeah,
back
and
to
I'd fly
school,
back.
right? So
Yeah.
that must have been a kind of like culture shock in the opposite way, where now you're
Yes.
back kind of amongst other guys going to college. You were in a fraternity. Were you living in the fraternity house at the time?
I did.
So
for 2 years.
what is that like where you're like coming home to the fraternity and you're telling these guys, hey, this is what I did this summer. I'm hanging out with Dave Faustino. I'm hanging out with Brian Green.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, my sister is also on Saved by the Bell. What is that all about? How's that?
So a lot of the guys I was in college with in my fraternity, I grew up with or knew from my area. So they knew my sister. That
Okay.
was not an issue for them.
Okay.
It was a fun thing, but I will tell you this. So when I would come to California, I remember Brian vividly making fun of how tight my jeans were. 'Cause I didn't have like the real baggy hip hop.
Yep.
Rain and Brian used to just, and even Rob would rip me to shreds because like, oh, you got the Kirk Cameron haircut, or you got your jeans are too tight.
Yep.
So I'd go out, I would buy the Alp boots. Remember Alp boots?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And
Oh my God.
I bought like baggy jeans. I don't know,
Yep.
like size 60 waist or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. I
And then
love
I'd
it.
go back
I
to
love it.
college, and then I'd wear those there, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I go back to my Levi's and whatever else. But the funniest thing was, I think it was the first year of ballistics, and I met all the guys from NWA, which
Yep.
to me was really cool. I wasn't into rap and hip hop,
Yep.
but sometimes in life you got to get out of your comfort zone. So it was really cool being able to be exposed to that other side of things that I was never exposed to.
Mhm.
So I came back to Michigan State and I'm playing, NWA and all that because it really hadn't hit back there
Yep.
yet. And I'm blasting it in my CRX and people
I
are
love
looking.
it. I love it.
So, like, I brought like pieces of different cultures back.
Just picture this,
That's
Jessica.
amazing, though.
A
I love
6'7" Jewish guy blasting NWA in Michigan. I
In
love
tight
it. Yeah, I
Levi's,
love it.
in tight Levi's.
With apparently with a Kirk Cameron
And
haircut.
I mean, that must have been interesting to be culturally in these different like culture moments, like social
Yes.
culture moments that were very different.
Very
And
much.
yeah, like how did that kind of not affect your friendships, but how did your friends feel about that when you would come back? Would they be like somewhat annoyed or would they be, cool?
No, not at all. No, they were always very interested to hear what was going on. I would kind of tell them the background things that I saw at ballistics. Now, bear in mind, I never drank. I never did drugs. And Dan, you can attest to
Yeah,
this.
no, that's true.
I was always the one that was sober, making sure everybody got home okay. I was always driving.
Yep.
So I remember everything. And so I never was, my mind was crystal clear with all of that. But I remember I'd come back and tell my friends something I'd witnessed or had seen. And they all found it so interesting because you can kind of pull the curtain back a little bit on someone who has a public persona, but then when they're privately, and it was nothing ever a few things were probably a little embarrassing for some of those people, and I'm not going to go there and
I
bring
mean,
that up.
You got to also realize we're like teenagers at this time. So we're going through
there's,
regular
terrible
teenage stuff
decision-making,
going
impulse
on.
control
Yeah.
issues.
And the other thing too, Jason was just a couple years older than us. So it was like the older brother kind of like helping and looking out for us.
You guys are why he became a neurologist.
These guys were still kind of doing the club thing and all that stuff. And I started med school. Things changed drastically for me because I really didn't have the time to do all that, even when I came out here for rotations. So I've basically, and it wasn't the internet stuff. I mean, everybody had pagers when it cell phone.
Was Elizabeth on Good Morning Miss Bliss?
Yes, it was Good Morning Miss Bliss. It was Mark Paul, I think Lark Voorhees and Dustin Diamond.
Yep.
And then there was other kids. But what happened was,
remember it.
When Saved by the Bell then took off, they took those shows of Good Morning Miss Bliss and marketed them as Saved by the Bell.
Yep.
In the beginning.
So at one point, as they're about to jump the shark on Saved by the Bell, before we went to like the college years and stuff, they had a series of episodes where, do you remember the old Sand and Sea Club down in Santa Monica?
Yep.
So there was this beach club in Santa Monica. Yeah. Well, so
club.
you know where I'm going with this, right, Jason?
Yep.
So they did like, a summer where they all worked at the beach club, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see this 6'7" towel boy in the background walking through the beach club, right? This is like Jason's famous cameo.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Oh, well, not just that. I was on every one of those beach episodes that were any of the scenes that were outside.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was on the whole summer. And actually, I was studying for my MCATs for med school. So I made money that year studying for my MCATs, where they'd say, go sit on the lounge
So cool.
and so I'd sit there and read, or, they'd say, go stand behind this person. And so there's a scene though, and the funniest, the first day I did it, there was a scene where Tiffany had to go rescue a guy that was drowning.
Tiffany Amber Thiessen, who was Kelly on Saved by the Bell. Yeah. Exactly. Just so people know who we're talking about.
Yes, they yelled to us, okay, everybody come down to the edge of the beach and line up and act like you're concerned about her rescuing this guy. So if you go and look at the episode, they start panning the crowd, and then you see everybody's concerned faces. And of course, they come where I am, and half my head is cut off. I'm so tall. The camera.
So you stayed in Los Angeles after you graduated?
No,
or you came back down.
I was all over. I was in Arizona for a couple months for rotations, LA, and then I went back to Detroit for my internship, my residency, and my first fellowship permanently in 2002. I didn't really have a job. I moved to Brentwood, and I started working. My first job, wasn't happy there, and then I went a couple other places, wasn't happy there, and then got into the spine and pain management situation, and went back into another fellowship, and I stayed there. Now I've been in solo practice by myself there for, now coming up on 11 years.
Oh, wow.
And couldn't be happier. Yeah, it's really worked out very well, and it's exactly where I want to be, exactly what I wanted to be doing. Yeah, so it's worked out great.
Did you know the scene in Swingers where they're going to a party in the hills and they take like 9 cars to get there? That was us.
That was everyone in LA.
The thing is, but in the movie, they're each driving their own car, and our cars were like filled with like 10 people each.
Yeah, for sure. People were sitting on laps. I remember those days.
I mean, I sat back one time. We were going there sometime, and actually, again, to bring up Soleil Moon Frye, who is absolutely one of the nicest people on the planet I've ever met.
Yep.
We're in her car, and every time from now on, since then, she was really into the Violent Femmes. I remember, and every time I hear the Violent Femmes, I think about. I'm like, I'm sitting here in Soleil Moon Frye's car, and I never got starstruck with these people. It didn't fit me, but I just sit back and say, how did I get here, so to speak? It was kind of a surreal moment in some of these situations. Or we were at Robin Thicke's house. God rest his soul, Alan was there. Again, very, very nice guy. Always liked him.
Big hockey fan.
I remember one time we ended up at Wayne Gretzky's birthday party with Alan.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Said, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
In later years, I became very friendly with James Caan, who unfortunately passed away, and his brother Ronnie. And I remember Scotty Caan would come around when he was much younger.
Mm-hmm.
I just think about those things, like, it just all comes together, and it's all just such a small community.
And that's the weird thing about it too, Jason, and that's kind of what the show is about, is, for me anyway, growing up in Beverly Hills, and I think for Jessica too. And then, you didn't grow up in Beverly Hills, but you became part of this community and part of this scene that we were all part of, where, it was, in some regards, it's like probably very similar to the same people you knew in high school in Michigan, where it's just like teenagers having fun on a Saturday night. It just so happens that this guy's dad is James Caan. This guy is on a TV show when he's not hanging out. And it was like, but to us, it was just our normal teenage group hanging out on a Saturday night. Just maybe we could go for the free sushi that Dave had the card for. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, and honestly, everybody was always so friendly. Especially I remember Will.i.am, because at the time he really wasn't, big.
He was
yet.
Will 1X back then.
Yeah, and just a nice guy.
Yeah.
And back, you walk by him, and I'd met him a few times, and he'd say, "Hey, Jason, how you doing?"
Yep.
Or Eazy-E.
Yep.
I remember having a whole conversation about BMWs with him.
Yeah. He had the white 850. That's like, everybody knows him for that white 850. Yeah. And it's funny. Will, to this day, Will used to come to Ballistics, which was our hip hop club that we're doing a documentary about. And Will's been very supportive in helping us get this documentary made. But Will, credits, we had a weekly rap contest. He won the rap contest every week. He got noticed by Eazy-E, got signed to Ruthless Records. And to this day, he's a huge star. He's super talented. He would have got discovered no matter what.
Totally.
But he credits, Ballistics for helping him have a platform where he could get recognized.
It was definitely a time and everybody was around
Yep.
and there wasn't cell phones and there was like access
Yep.
and you could take a bus still and it didn't
Yeah.
cost as much.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of like amazing factors
Yep.
during that time.
Yep.
Out of curiosity, because your sister obviously was doing, movies and television shows
And never hanging out at Ballistics, by the way.
as a
No,
brother.
she
Never did.
Ironically, obviously you both were really good kids.
And there was, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. And there was other people from the cast who were, Mario Lopez was at Ballistics. Mark Paul was at Ballistics. He was very good friends with Soleil.
Everybody was very genuine. And I think that was the one thing too, that there was kind of an innocence there where a lot of people, and again, probably because they were living in the moment and not worried about getting likes and whatever else.
There was
I also think there was again, like to the point of it being a time. I also think at the end of the day, all of these kids, they were teenagers. They had grown up together in this industry.
But I think Jason has a very good point. Some of these guys who were on TV, look, if something were to go awry or if there was something to report, it would have been reported on. And because there was no, Instagram or phones or recordings, we could have the egg fight. We could do whatever we were doing that maybe, look,
poor
teenage
Justin Bieber
trouble,
tried to do that once,
but
didn't he?
it's still trouble that maybe you don't want people to know about. So I'm going to tell you one other secret fact about Jason, okay? So, as I'm going through my notes and I brought up Saved by the Bell, and I thought that was, the height of his TV experience. But Jason, there was a show called Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Right?
I remember that show.
And apparently Jason is smarter than a fifth grader.
Who was the host, the comedian?
I technically wasn't Dan. Yes, Jeff Foxworthy.
Okay.
You weren't smarter than a fifth grader?
No, because I didn't complete the whole thing. So I guess to be considered smarter than a fifth grader, you would have had to have won the $1 million.
Okay. But you came very close, right?
Yeah, I won $300,000.
Wow.
Nice.
And I would have won
paid off some school loans, I'm sure.
Hey, it helped us get our first house.
Totally.
Yeah.
But one of my really lovely patients is a casting director, and she had indicated that there was a audition. She's like, "Look, I can notify you of it, but I have nothing else to do with it. You got to go in there and do your own thing." And I went in and auditioned, and out of 500 people who auditioned, 20 people were selected, and I got selected.
That's amazing.
And I've been on 3 game shows. And I might be on another one in a couple weeks. Don't ask. I don't know.
Way.
I can't help it. I like games.
Wow. I didn't even know that about you.
Well, while you were doing all your child acting, I got into the game show circuit somehow.
Awesome.
So I was actually on Funhouse with Nora Gottfried, who is Nora Weinstein, who runs Baby to Baby now. Good for her. She's amazing.
Wait. I want to get back to your quiz show appearance. I'll have to pay the price if we don't throw a little homage to my sister, who is a 3rd grade teacher. Apparently, she needs to go up a couple grades to get you to the $1 million. But she tutored you. My sister tutored him for Are You Smarter?
Oh my God, that's great!
I swear to you, it was like Slumdog Millionaire. I went into. I said, "Who do I know as a teacher?" Oh, Kathy. So I had texted Kathy. I think I got her number from you, Dan.
Yeah.
And I stopped by. She gave me one of her textbooks. And by the way, I did donate to her classroom keyboards.
That was very sweet of you.
So I said, Kathy, let me ask you a question. And I went through and I asked her a few questions about how many ounces are in a cup and how many cups are in a quart and a gallon. She told me this mnemonic. And actually, there was a question on the game show about that. And I used her mnemonic. I'm so mad about the last question that I bailed on. It was a music question. I thought it was unfair personally. But
especially since you knew NWA.
And he's like the biggest Springsteen fan of all time.
I saved the music category for last, thinking that it would have been the toughest one. And I figured, okay, maybe they'll ask me like what a treble clef is or whatever. I never took an instrument in school, so this question needed to learn how to read music to understand it. Oh. And the question was, how many beats are there? How many beats per measure are in 3/4 time? The problem was I didn't know how long a measure was.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a very unfair question if you hadn't taken band class or gone to band camp.
I love it.
So, I thought it was a very unfair question. But be that as it may, the money helped us with our down payment for our first house. And we sold that, and now we have a nicer house now, and it's all worked out well.
I do have to admit something because it came up on the podcast, I think on my podcast. So a couple whenever we recorded that, I was talking about this kind of Hollywood Passover. And if you can't tell or not, I am a Welsh Jew.
Yeah.
And there's like 3 of us on the planet. And my dad was in the music industry, so we were invited to Gaio series Passover. And
Do you know Guy Osiris?
I know the name.
Yeah, he's Madonna's manager.
Yeah, and
he went to Beverly High School.
He was head of Maverick at the time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, it was, I mean, I went one year by myself, and it was definitely very, very intimidating. But the year that I went with my dad was like the first year that this was like a full-blown blowout. I mean, you name them, they were there. David Geffen, Steve Tisch, Madonna, your sister, and Elizabeth Berkley, who is honestly absolutely fucking stunning in person.
Yeah,
I mean, and this was probably
and a sweetheart too, by the way.
Yeah, no, she 100%. Probably during the show, right when she was about to release Showgirls, or right after, which we can get to because that's
94, 95
yes,
or so. Yeah.
exactly.
Were you and now where were you?
Wait.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Stop interrupting.
I'm not gonna interrupt.
I'm going to stop it.
Go for it.
And I'm with my dad, who does happen to look, and always has, slightly younger than he is, and I always have happened to look ageless, like
You are
think, but
ageless.
when I was 15, I looked older, and people always thought that I was my dad's paramour or wife. And your sister would not believe us, like would not. She's like, there's no way. She's like, there's no way you guys, that your daughter and father. And I'm like, I swear to God, I will show you my age. I will show you my license. She's like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You look like you, yeah, it was very funny. And my dad and I do have a very kind of jovial relationship where it's not necessarily a typical daughter-father kind of banter.
You seem like the parent sometimes.
Sometimes, and I also drop the F-bomb a lot.
Yeah.
But your sister, and you know what's so funny? I do specifically remembering staring, because she has, I think, one eye kind of like it's called something where it's heterochromio. And I was so fascinated. I mean, she's a beautiful girl, and all I remember was her just being super sweet and completely unconvinced that we were father and daughter.
Wait, do you realize, growing up as a kid, I had no clue that she had 2 different colored eyes.
Because she's your sister. You weren't staring into the depths.
I never knew that until like later on when I was in my 20s.
Really? How come?
I had no clue.
Were you not looking at her?
No, who knows? I never know. I never noticed it. Maybe it developed later in life. I had no idea about it until somebody brought it up or I read it somewhere.
That's hilarious. How many years apart are you? You don't have to say who's older.
About 3.5.
Okay.
He said that. He said that.
That he's older?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, and were you very close growing up?
Yeah, very close. And then I went away to college, and then they moved. And so for about 4 years or so, I really was only there for vacation and didn't really, so, and then she got into the business and the whole thing. It was a whole,
How did that kind of unfurl? Like once your parents moved to LA, did she always want to get into that? Or did she kind of go, oh, I'm here and let me try to do this?
No. She had been doing it for a while. She started off doing a commercial for a Toledo television station years ago, did a lot of like modeling and print ads back in Michigan. And then in 1985, in July of 85, this is a great story, my mom took her out here to do some auditions and everything else. She actually got a show on one of the episodes of Give Me a Break with Nell Carter.
I remember that. Give me a break.
By the way, real quick, do you know that when Elizabeth was on Saved by the Bell and I was doing Pump the Volume, she and I had the same agent, Judy Savage.
Oh, that's so funny. I remember the name, Judy Savage. Yeah. It's funny. But so my mom came out here with her, and she said to me, it was the summer of 85. And she said, do you want to come out to California for a month? And I think Springsteen was touring in Europe at the time, so I wasn't going to miss much. I said, sure. And I came out with one of my best friends at the time, my friend Jason, and we stayed at Oakwood Apartments in Toluca Lake.
Oh, yeah. Sure. That's where they put up all the child actors.
Yeah. I'll never forget that. And met a group of guys there, and that's where I met Christy Swanson.
Okay.
She lived there with her brother, I believe, and she was acting and doing stuff, I think, right before she got Buffy. And she was always very nice and very sweet. She had I didn't see her very much, but I met her there. I remember I met her there. And there was another guy that I met.
Wait, stop real quick. Do you know who she dated?
Who?
Alan Thicke.
Oh, yeah. But also...
that New Year's, we were there at the house when I met Alan. Yeah. she was with him. I said, Christine? She said, Jason?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It was one of those weird moments, like just again.
I mean, you may as well have been a child star. You hung out with all these people.
I
You
know. Oh
lived
yeah, no,
up
that's
in
it.
Oakwood.
Well, that's
It's
it.
so
That's
interesting. So wait, okay.
Yeah.
When your sister did Showgirls, which by the way,
Yes.
seriously, one of my favorite soundtracks. Like it's a fucking phenomenal soundtrack.
Right.
Anyway, and I actually really loved that movie. What was your feelings or how did you feel as her brother when that came out? Was it something that you were like, oh boy, or just were you super proud? Or like, how did that? Because that was a big deal. Like, that was the first NC-17 film.
Oh yeah.
And
That was a big jump from Saved by the Bell
and
to
I think it
Showgirls.
shocked a lot of people.
Were you shocked, Jason?
Yeah, after the first 30 or 40 times I watched it, no, I'm kidding. I remember sitting in the premiere. Look, I was very proud of her. It was one of those situations where she took the movie because of the writer director who had basically put Sharon Stone on the map. And you know, as her brother, I was quite uncomfortable seeing some of the parts in the movie. I just closed my eyes.
Yep.
The problem was that when the movie didn't do well, the cowardly producer and director tried blaming my sister for the movie. And I'm like, wait a minute, she didn't write it, she didn't direct it. And you know, as for acting, if you're going to act a certain way, it's from the director telling you to do a scene a certain way.
Right.
And basically just dumped on her, which was an easy target as a younger, you know, young woman.
Newer on that kind of, yeah.
You know, and she was on the receiving end of a lot of criticism, a lot of bullshit, frankly, that wasn't her fault, and it hurt. You know, these guys, again, the writer producer, were just absolute cowards, and just
what a great big brother, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
well, I think also it
that's
says
such a
lot.
great answer, Jason.
That's how I still to this day would knock him out if I saw him. Just
Yeah.
because
What a great big brother.
You know,
what a
how
great
they
answer,
behaved.
Jason.
It was really just, you know, insulting, and just it was very, very chauvinistic in a way as well. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm being.
I was going to say that. I feel like that
but
happened a lot in the 90s.
Yeah.
I swear to God,
Yeah.
like it would, I mean, look at, honestly, Pamela Anderson went through
Yep.
that. Britney Spears went through that. That's just the Paris Hilton went through
Yep.
that. But legitimately, your sister and I think Pamela Anderson, when she did Barbed Wire, they were talking about, I mean, she had a miscarriage on that set. She went through
Yep.
fucking hell and back.
Yep.
And when the movie didn't do well, they blamed her.
Yep.
And it's very interesting. And you're right. I mean, there's a lot of choices that were made at that person's discretion.
Yep.
Which is Paul Verhoeven?
Yeah. Paul Verhoeven, and I can't remember the other guy's name, but yeah, I'm sorry.
That asshole.
Was it Joe
I'm saying, but
Esterhaus?
It's just Joe Esterhaus,
Yeah.
right? It's two grown men acting like cowards.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's as simple as that. And blaming a young woman for their failure.
How did that, I mean, I know that probably was very difficult for her.
It was.
During that time, yeah.
It was. And it's, you know, look, it's hard to shake things like that. I don't discuss it or bring it up anymore.
Yeah.
There's no, you know, you got to move on from things. But look, it certainly did affect her in other ways that was very unfair to her. And, you know, so look, life is full of choices, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
For sure.
you know, and if there's something that you do, that a choice you make, and it's something where, hey, look, you know what, I didn't give my best effort or whatever else, you can look back and see, look, okay, it was kind of on me. This was not that.
No. And you can
that
tell.
was, I think, the most frustrating thing about it.
There was a lot, because I remember when that movie was being made, and I remember there was a lot of like rumors and talked about like just stuff
Sure,
that was
yeah,
happening on
yeah.
set. And it was a really
It was a huge movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
huge. And there was a lot of like dance numbers,
Yep.
like big fucking
And that's the thing, your
dance. I mean,
sister's a
there's
great
so
dancer.
much.
She's like
She's
Yeah.
a
trained
great
dancer.
actor,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah, but that's
you
very
know,
sweet. I love the brotherly
I love it.
protection.
I love it.
I like
Oh,
the
no,
brotherly
yeah.
protection.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
It's been a
just
theme on this show.
It has.
Yeah.
that was my response to it, and it was a very, you know, look, it was a very frustrating situation, and you know, I got phone calls from, you know, I think it was Current Affairs, remember that show, and
Oh,
other,
God.
and I said, I'm not saying anything. Just like when the Selma Blair situation happened, I got calls from, you know, this show and that show. I said, I am not coming on and discussing a friend / patient. At the time, I really was also, you know, concerned about her well-being emotionally. But I kind of looked at both of them in the same way. Like, I'm not going to go on there and comment about it. That's not going to, you're not going to get anything out of me.
The best.
So
Yeah.
He's the best.
Well, you can tell, and he's a doctor, and he likes sports, and he's got 2 daughters. He's clearly a fan of women, so,
He would
um,
listen.
and now your
Listen.
sister's
Hold
Auntie
on.
Elizabeth,
Hold on.
right?
As
I
somebody,
love that.
wait,
I
real
love
quick.
it.
Stopping you there for a second. As somebody who's known Jason for probably 30 years, before he was a doctor, before he had 2 daughters, he was a fan of
I
women.
know.
Okay.
I know. No, I get no, I
Yeah, I mean, look,
You don't have to be shy about it. You don't need to be
No, but I mean-
ashamed.
no, but he's not a chauvinistic pig is
No,
what
he's
I'm
not.
getting
but
at.
I mean,
No.
look, I have always made it my point as best as I can to respect women.
Yep.
And my mom really instilled that in me. And I think that it goes on I think we're always reflections of our parents.
Yep.
And I think that that's what I'm
Which
trying to
scares the
impart to my
fuck out of
daughter.
me as a parent. But anyway.
Oh, but it's true. I think we're reflections of our parents. There are examples, and I think I'm trying to set that example for my daughter.
Yep.
My parents set that example for me, and I always tried to, at least be gentlemanly. I still to this day open a door for a woman. I let a woman get out of an elevator first. I mean, it's. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna,
I love
change.
He's a good dude.
He's a good
He's
dude.
a good dude.
Look, I have my faults, but yes, look, but I never really was into the whole scene just because I was kind of more the older, awkward guy in a sense when we were all hanging out.
Jason, I can't thank you enough for doing this and spending the
Yeah,
time.
my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
by the way, before we wrap it up, I do want you to plug your podcast one more time.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's called Dr. Hockey.
Yep.
It's on like Apple Podcasts, and I believe Spotify. I'm not sure, but definitely Apple Podcasts.
And
Yeah, we talk about hockey, and I try to talk about the Red Wings as much as possible. I'm just very proud of everybody,
Yeah.
and it's just cool to see. And if Robin Thicke is listening, if Brian Austin Green is listening, these are guys I have not seen probably in close to 20, almost 30 years now at this point.
Yep.
I would love to see you guys, and Bo Jesse, I'd love to see you again. We grab some dinner. It'd be wonderful to get everybody together.
There's going to be a premiere, I promise you, for the Ballistics movie, and we were all going to be there.
That's awesome.
Okay.
I know we didn't get a chance to actually meet back in the day, but I can see why everybody adored you. Okay, thank you so much for joining us again on this episode of 90who10 with Jason Berkley, Dr. Jason Berkley. Thank you so much for joining us. Our next guest is already in the studio. We'll be talking with Bo, Jesse, Christopher, lots of fun LA stories, lots of fun updates on. We'll get to that point. And thank you so much. Until next time, we'll see you in the streets of Hollywood.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Or on 90who10.